Hello and welcome to the new episode of Dakota Boys Talk Movies, another audio episode for you people who hate our ugly mugs out there.
And there are a lot of you, I know.
There are a lot of you. Or some of you are indifferent, whatever. But we just figured we might as well just keep this one audio because we don't really have anything to show. It's more just kind of us talking out some ideas. And so tonight's episode, we're going to focus on, what do you want to call them? I'm blanking. Sequels. I don't know why I couldn't think of that word. We're going to talk about some sequels that we think should have happened and didn't, and some sequels that did happen but shouldn't have happened. And I'm going to go over a few of those. But, yeah, Dakota, how you feeling tonight?
I'm feeling pretty good.
Feeling pretty good.
I got a good feeling about this one.
That's good because unlike the whole, seems like everyone in the Star Wars universe has a bad feeling about everything. But I don't. It's like the thing they say. But yeah, so that's what we're gonna dive into tonight, and I think we're just gonna get right into it, get right into the nitty gritty of it all. And so let's start with maybe a shouldn't have had a sequel. So Dakota, what do you got for a shouldn't have had a sequel?
I love the fact that we're getting right down to the meat of the potato. Okay. This movie that I'm thinking of came out both when we were kids, and it's a pretty solid movie. It has some flaws. It's not perfect, but it was a perfect summer blockbuster movie.
Rookie of the Year?
No. Not even close.
Okay.
Okay, I'm talking of Independence Day.
Ooh, the 1996, kind of in a lot of ways, the new modern blockbuster. That and Twister were a couple of the first ones. And what I mean by modern, I know a lot of people are like, well, that was Jaws. That started the blockbuster. But then we came into the surround sound era and the THX, the thing Lucas created for surround sound. And Independence Day was one of the first, along with Twister, that really changed movie experiences. It was about the big popcorn flick.
Yeah, I've heard people refer to this as the glory days because people weren't using CGI so much and they were relying on practical effects and the stories were better. We're not here to debate that. We're just here to talk about this movie, which I think is pretty great.
It's definitely fun. Even now when you look back and yeah, maybe the spaceship scenes are a little dated and some of the CGI, but it's still a fun romp.
Yes, it is. It's like a roller coaster of adrenaline. I don't know.
Yeah, it's fun. And, you got Will Smith there back when he was still just trying to have fun and not trying to be serious and win awards or something. But, yeah. So that was great. But then what happened?
Well, nothing really for like 20 years.
Exactly.
And then, I don't know. Roland Emmerich apparently got tired of making these horrible disaster movies.
Yeah, it was kind of one of those things where we all did want an Independence Day sequel, but this is when you start to ask the question: is there a point when it's too late?
Yeah,
and I think he answered that question for us.
Well, I find it funny that Will Smith himself kind of thought it was a bad idea to make this movie, which kind of tells you something about the whole thing, I feel. That maybe you shouldn't have done it.
Well, yeah, you can't always totally judge something by that if a certain actor wouldn't be in it, but yeah, when you think about this movie, though, it should kind of make you kind of step back, reevaluate. Like, should I still do this when one of the people that made the first one memorable not be in it? And so, I don't know. This was one that really toyed with my emotions because it was a sequel I kind of always wanted. And then that first teaser kind of led you to believe, like, I don't know, there could be something there, And I always forget that Roland Emmerich does that to you.
Yeah, the problem
with
is
his trailers.
The problem is they rested the entire movie essentially on Jeff Goldblum shoulders, and it just did not work.
I would argue it rested too much on the shoulders of Liam Hemsworth.
Yeah.
And whoever Will Smith's son was, some kind of newcomer guy.
I'm just disappointed it wasn't Jaden Smith. They could have totally done that. And
Yeah.
I probably would have forgiven the movie a little bit more.
That kid's so small, though. He wouldn't have been a believable fighter pilot. They would have had to have him sit on a phone book or something.
Yeah. But this movie, we didn't review this movie. I guess I talked about
We talked about it in our summer recap episode.
Yeah, it was just not that good. I kind of just wanted to fall asleep halfway through it, and Brent Spiner's character, for some reason, was really...
He'd be the cuckoo scientist with long gray hair for the first one, if you don't know who Brent Spiner is.
Yeah, the one who was dead, apparently, but he wasn't. He was in a coma.
They explained it off as a coma, which is kind of lame.
Yeah, it was just... I don't know why they decided to go ahead with this movie. And
it was a movie that had a lot of things seem to happen, and yet nothing happened.
Yeah, it just didn't feel right in a way.
Yeah.
I mean, there was some cool... The effects in this movie are the only thing, really, that this movie has going for it.
Right.
Because they were really spectacular, but just story acting was just bad.
Well, and you're right, too, with when you brought up Jeff Goldblum, because nostalgia-wise, it does rest on him. Because Bill Pullman is basically checked out of this movie. He's there, but he's not there. And so, like Force Awakens, you kind of had Harrison Ford to kind of hold your hand into this new thing, and he could do it because he's Harrison Ford. But Goldblum didn't quite hold that together, like you said. And then when you surround him with uninteresting people that you kind of hope lose, maybe the aliens will win and wipe out these terrible people, that doesn't help either. So, because I didn't mind, I thought Goldblum was good in the first movie.
Yeah, he was.
But then you realize that some of what you liked about him was how he played off of Will Smith, especially when they kind of getting paired together for the mission.
Yeah, if you watch it, though, he's in it. He's not in it as much as you think he would be, though.
In Independence Day?
Yeah. It's like you think about him essentially almost being like half of the movie, but he's not. He's not really. I mean, I think he gets equal screen time with Randy Quaid.
Yeah, I guess Goldblum's kind of more there for the important stuff, isn't he?
Yeah, but at the end of the day, Will Smith essentially made that movie. He was too cool. I never thought I'd say that. He was too cool.
He was the Fresh Prince. That's what he was at that point.
Guys wanted to be him. Girls wanted to be with him.
Yeah, all of it.
It was It was a great movie, but the follow-up is just... I feel like this is one of those movies. Fox seems to have quite a few of them lately, where they just kind of want to sweep under the rug and pretend like nothing happened.
And then it begs the question, why? Why did you do it to begin with, then?
Like I said, I think Roland Emmerich got...
But they funded him.
Yeah.
That's what... They must have saw something there where they're like... Because, they have plans for this to be 2 or 3 more movies.
Yeah, this was supposed to be a trilogy, a kickoff to a trilogy of movies.
Which it made enough worldwide where... Now, everybody sit down, and there might be a little shiver down your spine, but they might actually make another one.
If they do, I think... Honestly, it'll probably star people we haven't heard of, or people from 90s TV shows
or
who are popular.
The only original cast member that'll come back is Brent Spiner.
Yeah,
since it ends with his big eureka moment.
I think if they do something, it'll be like, I can't even remember the sequel to Tom Hanks's Angel and Demons movie that kind of just went under and people are...
Inferno?
Yeah.
I think.
Which did the opposite of Inferno. It imploded on itself. And
he had a couple misses this year. A lot of people forgot about Hologram for a King.
Yeah.
There's another Tom Hanks that just kind of came and went.
But it's just one of those movies where people kind of just, and then the studio tries to sweep it under the rug.
Yep. And you always, for an Independence Day sequel like this, you're always going to have the all caps people that are like, it's just a movie. It's just for fun. The first one was a popcorn flick. That was stupid too. It's like, yeah, but the first one kind of had a heart.
Yeah, the first one was
The first one-
actually enjoyable.
It was enjoyable. It had a heart. This one was just heartless. And then it scares me because he's talking about redoing Stargate now. Roland Emmerich. It's
good
like,
Lord.
oh no. Oh god. The only way that could work is if he brings back Kurt Russell.
Oh, God.
So yeah, well that's your first shouldn't have. My shouldn't have. I'm gonna go on a crazy wacky limb here. Go a little more family fair,
Harry and the Hendersons?
G-rated area with the Santa Claus shouldn't have had sequels.
I was worried you were going to go Jingle All the Way.
Oh god, they made a sequel.
They did.
I'm trying to remember. I think it has a wrestler or something. Or Larry the Cable Guy.
Yeah, it's Larry the Cable Guy.
If there's a sequel to a semi-hit movie, it's either Larry the Cable Guy or WWE Studios is producing it. Kind of random.
Yeah, but
The Santa Claus. Ugh.
I'm going to be honest with you. That last one was so bad, I blacked it out. All I remember is I think Martin Short was in it.
Martin Short is Jack Frost.
Yeah.
The one the winter character you couldn't remember in our last episode.
That's right.
Yeah, Okay. The Santa Claus 3 is just everything about it is garbage. It's a what do they call it? A dumpster fire of a mess. Just everything about it. Part of it is because it's like the director was like, oh my gosh, we got Martin Short. I'm just going to let the camera linger on him and it's going to be comedy gold. And that's what it is. And we just felt like they just well, let's let Martin Short just go Martin Short. Full Martin Short. Now, I don't know if any of you have ever seen the movie Clifford.
Oh, good Lord.
Not the big red dog. This is a movie where Martin Short, as a 40-year-old man, played an 8-year-old boy?
No, I think he was 12 or 13.
And Charles Grodin played his uncle. Yeah.
Who was in love with Mary Steenburgen, played the love in...
Steenburgen, yep. And it's basically, in a sense, a What About Bob type movie.
Yeah.
Where Charles Grodin is basically driven crazy by his nephew to the point where he's gonna take him on this scary roller coaster ride. And it almost feels like hoping it'll kill his nephew is what it feels like.
Yeah.
But his nephew is all innocent, happy-go-lucky, and annoying. And that was a movie where that was the first time I saw Martin Short go full Martin Short. And it was like, oh man, this is bad.
You never go full Martin.
You never go full Martin Short. He was really pulled back in Three Amigos.
Yeah.
He was playing like this kind of innocent, wide-eyed young actor guy, and it worked in Three Amigos because they kind of pulled him in like, no, Martin, just do your little guy funny stuff, but don't go crazy. But yeah, Santa Claus 3 is another example. He just went crazy. But I just want to break down the second one. You could argue, well, there was a point. The second one did have a point. It was, he needed a wife. It's kind of like what they did with Despicable Me 2. It was kind of an excuse to give Gru a wife and the girl's a mother. But it just wasn't very good. And I think part of it was one of those stories where it was a Santa Claus story that could have been just for any Santa Claus. You could have just made a movie called Mrs. Claus or something, and it could have been about Santa Claus needing a wife.
I think that's been done on the Hallmark Channel already.
I'm sure it has.
Yeah.
Well, they attached this one to the Santa Claus franchise where it's like, oh, there's a clause to your claws. You got to magnify in more. And it's just bad. And then they made, who ends up kind of being almost more the antagonist in the first movie is Judge Reinhold. Kind of being trying to be the level-headed realist psychiatrist. Well, now that he believes there's a Santa Claus, like him and Scott Calvin, Tim Allen's wife, just become like weird goofballs in the sequels. It's like they turn them into these weird comic relief characters. And the second one is barely forgivable, but unnecessary. And then the third one, I just go back to, is just like, oh, you just want to rip your eyeballs out and then, lose your hearing if you have to sit through it because it's so rough. And it was just one of those examples where once again, they waited longer than, let's see, I think from the first one to the second one was like 6 or 7 years. And I think once you...
Wow, that's quite a...
And then the last two were made within, 5 years or something, And so I think that's where you need to step back and go. Once you get beyond like 3 years, or you never had a plan for a sequel. You just never had a plan, but then 4 or 5, 6 years down the road, you go, well, I don't know what else to do. Maybe I think that's where the studios just need to like.
I think it's funny that there's so many movies out there like that.
It becomes a money grab.
I'm going to go back to Will Smith here. The reason we never got an I Am Legend 2, this was up until a couple of years ago. Apparently, they had a script ready.
Okay.
But he was of the mind that, no, I'm going to pass because I think a majority of people forgot about that movie already. So bye. And it's like...
Because it was a forgettable movie.
Yeah, that's...
it made a lot of money, which is why Warner Brothers said, well, God, that made a lot of money. We could bring back Will Smith. But Will Smith, that was a case where he was smart enough to maybe just be like, it's been too long.
Yeah. And I feel like some people, that's really what they should do. Kind of a sequel that was made that really shouldn't have been, Caddyshack 2, which I think Chevy Chase just made because they threw enough money at him. And he was like, okay. And Rodney Dangerfield was smart enough to know, I think we said everything with the first one. We don't have to continue this,
and there's
guys.
a reason the first one's a classic.
Yeah.
And the second one nobody talks about.
Plus, too, it's Rodney Dangerfield was one of those characters, one of those actors who could really like command the scene.
Well, he was just, look at him. Everything about him was just held your attention.
Yeah. Whereas Chevy Chase, yeah, he had some good movies, but that was more due to the actual filmmakers and the supporting cast than himself.
Yeah, when you actually see a movie where it really depends on him or he has to do more, he's not very good. But yeah, I'm with you there. But let's go. Let's kind of flip flop here. Let's go up to a should have happened. So what do you got for a should have happened?
Around this time of year, as the snow starts to fall, I think of this movie. One of my fondest childhood memories is watching this movie in the wintertime. I'm referring to The Thing.
It's a nice, cozy by the fire with the hot chocolate movie.
Yes.
I
went the complete opposite of Steven here.
Just to clarify, he's talking about the 1982?
Yeah.
I believe it was 1982 John Carpenter one. And
John Carpenter's magnum opus, people.
Yeah.
Which is saying something. It is.
It definitely wasn't Ghosts of Mars.
Yeah. He, unfortunately, was not the filmmaker he was later on in life, but during the 70s and 80s, he made some great movies.
So, just to clarify, you are putting this above Big Trouble in Little China.
Yes.
Escape from New York.
Yes.
Okay.
I'm even putting this above...
Well,
wait for it.
Here it is.
They Live.
Oh, I thought you were going to say Halloween.
Oh, no. Halloween's the only one I would have to think about it. Like a day of solid thinking. I'd have to go for a walk, fly a kite, go kayaking.
Just sit in the park, buy some birds for a while.
Yeah. Read some poetry. Just get in the mindset to really think about this.
Day by day, he gazed upon her. Yeah. So yeah, okay. Well, okay. I'm not going to disagree with you. This movie is pretty great. I would just wanted to clarify that you are actually putting this above some that people hold pretty dear.
Yep, I'm putting my stamp on it.
Okay, there it is.
And
the DAC stamp.
One of the reasons I do is just, there are really no weak points in this movie. There's nothing that draws. Literally, right from the get go, we're thrown into like action.
Yep.
Into the action,
or at least thriller, suspense.
Yeah. And there's so many facets of this movie. It's like John Carpenter was like a master craftsman at this point. There's moments of tension, there's moments of levity, there's some kind of parts that kind of make you smile a little bit.
Well, how many times this day has versions or hybrids of the blood testing scene been done.
Oh my gosh!
I mean, he started that, and it's still probably the most tense in the thing when they're testing everybody's blood for if they're one of them.
Yeah,
It's like, man, you can't beat that tension.
yeah. This movie, if you look at it in a certain light, is kind of the grandchild of all those monster movies from way back in. I'm not talking Dracula, but the Wolfman, Creature from the Black Lagoon, stuff like that, where they kind of wanted to make these really scary monsters, but the effects at the time, it's like, okay, we're just going to have to throw a guy in some suit or some makeup. But this one, I'm not really sure what the monsters were, animatronic or...
In John Carpenter's The Thing,
Yeah.
it was... I think he mixed animatronic with stop motion, and then a lot of everything was practical.
Yeah.
You know, where they had to make the things work on the set, and so was all these kind of just practical animatronic prosthetics and things like that. So, which makes it very realistic. They did it in such a way where there's some scenes where it feels real.
Yeah, that's one of the things I always loved about this movie. I mean, there are moments in other sci-fi / horror movies where we see the alien or the monster, and it just looks horrible.
Well, and I think what makes this an interesting movie too is it's a movie where the monster just could be anybody, which kind of makes me wonder: was this supposed to be kind of a communism movie? Like you don't know who could be one.
Well, it was a remake of a movie from the 50s, so maybe.
Could have been. But yeah, so here's where I get to you. Now you're saying this should have a sequel.
Yes.
How would that work? Because sometimes classics just don't. I mean, I'm guessing maybe at this point you don't want there to be a sequel, or do you still want there to be a sequel at this point even?
Well, here's the thing. You could do it, and it'd be a little more along the lines of... This is the problem, though. It'd be a little more along the lines of Aliens.
Okay.
Where, we saw that the very end shot is we see the dog running. And we're
yes.
kind of supposed to... Is that a dog? Is it the thing? We don't know. But
the movie ends with basically a huge question mark.
But the sequel would pick up a few months after it, where you have these string of outposts that are essentially just have gone silent. Like they haven't been hearing anything from them. So this company kind of hires this. It gets a little cheesy in the beginning. I figured. I kind of came up with a synopsis in my head, people. And I'll just throw it out there. So this government hires these private contractors to go in. And this is where it kind of turns into Alien vs. Predator for a little bit.
Bear with him. Let's hope that's not a bad thing.
But they kind of go in and to one of these places, and they find essentially no one there. There's a little bit of damage to the place. Obviously there was a fire. It wouldn't be the place where Kurt Russell had his showdown with the thing. And then, they just kind of go room to room. They eventually, huge snowstorm, so they get stuck there. And then the hilarity ensues. And by hilarity, I mean all the god-awfulness just breaks loose. And
so would your modern-day sequel have any CGI?
I would probably try to scale it back.
Use it as a tool?
Yes.
Not your main creature effect?
Yeah.
Okay.
But I thought the Thing, quote-unquote, sequel, but it was really a prequel, actually was really good about that.
What year was that made?
Oh, man.
7?
08? 7? Yeah.
It had 10 Cloverfield Lane's Mary Elizabeth Winstead was the lead in that. And Joel Edgerton,
yeah.
Right? Yeah, it had some people who are kind of in and out of the spotlight. Joel Edgerton, way more so at this point. He's been getting some award buzz even. But yeah, he's actually in that movie. And I think that helps. You can tell. I did see that one, and the acting is good too, which I think was something that was interesting in that original was that, and maybe it's because it was it was 80s, but there's really a bunch of nobodies in the original The Thing except for Kurt Russell and kind of Wilford Brimley.
Yeah.
But they're all really believable in their roles.
Yeah.
You know, and they're all just, you believe them when they're tense. You know, you believe them when they're just kicking back. You know, whatever. It's just, yeah, it was interesting. John Carpenter definitely has a knack for taking people, like, even They Live. I mean, that movie does, in a way, barely work when you think about it. But he made Roddy Piper kind of cool and look good in a movie. I mean, everybody thought Roddy Piper was cool as a wrestler. But as an actor?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I guess a pro wrestler kind of is an actor. But we won't go there. But yeah, okay, The Thing. All right. And
All
you
right.
even have your premise there. So, okay, my should have. Now, both my should haves, I'm going to footnote with, I think it's been too long and they shouldn't maybe do it now, but that's why I said they should have had one, but now it's too late probably. And the first one I'm going to do is The Rocketeer.
Great movie.
Yeah, it was a hit. It was a hit when it came out. Siskel and Ebert gave it 2 thumbs up. Everybody was loving it. Yes, this is the Siskel and Ebert days, you know. And it was a Disney movie, of all things. This is back when Disney would dabble in doing kind of an interesting live-action movie, which they didn't really get back into until, Pirates of the Caribbean? Probably is really, they really got heavily more into making interesting live-action movies. I'm not talking about, like, Shaggy Dog type things, but, like interesting ones.
Yeah, movies where they kind of have, like, this epic scope to them. And
Yeah, they're trying to do something,
yeah.
you know, instead of just, like, goofy Disney movie. And Rocketeer is actually a comic strip and comic book that they apparently got the rights to, and even got the creator's blessing. He was really a part of it. In fact, I have the comic book of the movie that he did, that he drew and wrote out and things like that, because I love this movie. And it's just cool because it's about a stunt pilot who ends up discovering a rocket pack that was kind of ditched and hidden in his airplane hangar by some not the greatest of guys, you know, who did it there, and he starts to use it at first accidentally to just help a friend who's in trouble, and then it ends up being kind of a bigger convoluted plot where the Nazis get involved, where the Nazis were actually after this technology that was created by Howard Hughes. They bring in a fictionalized version of Howard Hughes who was developing these things, and the Nazis are trying to get a hold of this technology, and so this normal guy, Cliff Secord, ends up being the hero in taking down this kind of little group of secret Nazis within the U.S. This would have been right before, a few years before the U.S. got involved in the World War II. But what makes it interesting is you had Timothy Dalton play like a really awesome Clark Gable-esque guy who was just evil. So it's cool because he gave this Clark Gable performance, but he was just like evil. And then he had this big giant henchman. That was just cool to have like this big ugly henchman who felt like an unstoppable force. It just had this Joe Johnston, who directed the first Avenger, Captain America First Avenger, did this movie, and he's just good at getting that like old-timey feel and making it fun. And so it's just fun. And so I just thought it'd be cool to do like a follow-up where you kind of see like some of the next steps of that rocket pack and where it leads to, and it could or could not involve Cliff Secord. But at this point, I think it's just too far gone where they just either need to let it go or reboot. But even a reboot's kind of scary.
Yeah.
At this point. And then this movie also had Jennifer Connelly.
Oh, yeah.
When she was just like...
Vavoom.
Yeah, like in her haughty, voluptuous prime. Which, I don't know, at some point she like went all, like, I don't know, Atkins diet or something, where she just went all like rail thin, like all the women feel like they need to be now.
Yeah, and then
But this was back when she like had a figure, but it wasn't a bad thing.
Yeah, then she got really serious, too, about what acting job she would take. And
well, it was after she won her Academy Award.
yeah.
They get all like, oh, I gotta do pretentious things now.
How's that working out for you, huh, Jen?
Jeez. Just get all harsh.
I'm sorry. That was uncalled for.
But yeah, it was just a really fun movie, and it was just like, man, it had a great soundtrack even by the late James Horner.
Oh,
and,
yeah, that's
man,
right.
just good stuff. And actually, for those of you who are Office fans, Jan Levinson Gould is in this movie, and she's actually like the ritzy club singer. And it's just funny because now when you go back and watch it, all you can think of is Jan singing one of her crazy songs to her baby on The Office.
I think I might have to go back and watch
Yeah,
this part.
I didn't until like I watched it like 3 years ago, and I'm like, it's Jan Levinson Gould. Her name is I don't know what her name is in real life. Something. But yeah, anyway, she's in that for you Office fans. So that's kind of funny to see her being this lounge singer since she does kind of sing in the office every once in a while. But I always just kind of had this little torch held that The Rocketeer would happen all through my childhood into teen years. And then I just had to just very unceremoniously put out that torch and put it in a drawer and let it go.
Yeah, if anything, I'm kind of surprised that there wasn't a sequel because it seems like Disney...
They're kind of a sequel machine.
Tends to beat them to death, and then even when they're dead, tries to beat them even more.
I think this would have had a sequel if it were animated.
Oh, yeah, most definitely.
I think what hurt it was live act. Alan Arkin is even in this movie. How could I not have brought him up? I thought he was awesome in this too. But, yeah, I think just live action just kind of affected it a little bit. And maybe Disney just kind of looked at it and were like, I don't know. Did it do well enough for us to make another one or whatever? I don't know. I also saw this at a magical point in my life. I saw it when I was like still in early elementary, and I saw it on a summer night outside in the city park on a screen, and it was eating ice cream. It was just like a magical experience. Everything about it is magical. So that kind of affects it a little bit too. But I still think it's a good movie.
It's actually the fun. Here's the thing. A lot of movies that were made in the 90s really do not hold up well.
No. You're right.
Me being a horror movie connoisseur, I used to think Event Horizon was great. I hadn't seen it for 7 years up until a year ago, and I put it in, and I'm just like, what is this? This is like really cheesy and needlessly violent, and I'm not sure what Sam Neill's trying to do. What was I thinking? It's just one of those movies.
That's funny. So, well, let's go into your next ones. Enough of us reminiscing on that. Let's do your shouldn't have. Your next shouldn't have.
The next shouldn't have. I was thinking about this recently, and we talked about it a little bit, but this movie was the high point in a franchise.
In a frying pan?
In a franchise. Not French fries, a franchise.
It's the high point in my French fries.
But for some reason, they decided to keep making these movies, and the last one was just universally hated, except oddly enough by me and my brother, I guess.
That's not oddly. You like a lot of random movies, man.
But I am referring to Terminator 2, Judgment Day.
Shouldn't have?
I think that it should have ended right there. It should have ended right there.
So you think T2 should have been the last one?
Yes.
Okay.
It was too just there are no words to describe how amazing this movie is. I mean, even when I was young, I would just sit down and just gawk at how mind-blowing the effects were, the cool T-1000, Robert Patrick running like 45 miles an hour, which apparently he can't do anymore because he has a bad hip.
I don't think anybody can run that bad. I think it's humanly impossible.
But it was just one of those movies that really kind of caught you and took you to another place someplace you don't want to be, but it still just changed a lot of things, like how you view movies, action movies, sci-fi movies. This movie had like a lot of heart, and it just kind of always. I kind of always just thought every time somebody brought up the Terminator, I would think of Terminator 2. Like, oh, that was a great movie.
And so what are your problems with Terminator 3?
Oh, there's just too many to list. From the star.
Casting choices are bad.
Yes.
Yep.
Yes.
Yep.
To Arnold looking noticeably older, but hey, we're still going to go with it because, well, we want that money. And it just seemed kind of convoluted, like they weren't sure what they were doing. And, it was, there were some moments that kind of made you chuckle, but there was nothing in there really that I thought was kind of interesting. I mean, we had the Terminatrix. Ooh.
Yeah, it wasn't terribly interesting.
It was just, honestly, this really felt like a sci-fi movie that got, just $200 million to make, in its budget to make. And and then Rise of the Machines, I tried watching it 3 times.
Well, that was 3. Rise of the Machines is 3.
Oh, I'm sorry, not Rise of the Machines.
Salvation is 4.
Terminator Salvation.
That's the Christian Bale one, just for you people who don't know.
I actually tried watching it 3 times, failed every time.
So you've never finished it?
No, I finished it like years later. Years.
And there was a point when Salvation came out that I really liked it. And I think it was because you had such a bad taste from 3, where you're like, and you were still in that high from Christian Bale being Batman.
Yeah.
Where you're like, oh yeah, this is going in the right direction. I like this, and things like that. But it doesn't really, rewatchability is tough, and it was one where they tried to be like, oh, we're gonna have more action, and try to resolve things, but it really just ended up opening a whole new Pandora's box of problems.
Yeah, I think Mick G was the one who directed that.
Yeah.
I think he does things more so because he thinks it's gonna either come off as cool or be cool.
Yeah.
And
he got a lot of fake street cred because he did those Charlie's Angels movies.
Yeah.
And everybody's like, oh, it has cool action. It's like, no, it has corny action.
Yeah, but kind of like Paul W. Sanderson, he kind of rose to the top on a mountain of just fakeness, I feel. Like it was just illusion. And if you look close enough, you realize it was all just crap. That's how I feel.
And he's sinking. He's sinking into the crap.
But that's just how I felt. Terminator Genesis, I thought, was a little bit more fresher. Problem is, the rest of the world disagreed with me. And James Cameron, they disagreed with me and James Cameron. Yeah, I will always have that, I guess. But yeah, there were still some things with Terminator Genesis that I didn't really like or care for, but it was a fun movie. Certainly a step up from the other 2 that came after T2, but yeah, I definitely think they should have just ended it
So you
with
wanted
T2.
your last image of Arnold to be his thumb up in the air as he sinks into molten metal?
Yes.
I'm with you there. All right.
What about you, Steven?
Yeah, my other shouldn't have sequels would be Saw. Like, the first Saw movie came out in like 2004 and was just a really interesting kind of low budget, almost takes place in one room type movie, although there's a few other scenes in it. And it was kind of like the next wave of Blair Witch. And I don't mean because it's found footage or anything, but it was like, let's take a really basic premise and kind of flesh it into this kind of psychological suspense crime movie here. And I thought they did it very well, and it had a really interesting kind of twist ending that that really worked. Everybody's always hard on twist endings down the road, like, stupid. Like with Sixth Sense, everybody's like, oh, stupid. But it's like, well, at the time, everybody thought it was a really interesting twist. It's just that now it feels like old hat. That's just kind of how that goes.
Yeah, this movie easily has probably one of the better twists of all time.
Well, and the first one just had an interesting. It had just more interesting things going on in it, where it was like you trying to understand the mystery of what was going on, and not understanding who the actual bad guy was and why these people were picked, and and what was going on and how they were going to get out of here. But then what happened after this was this, I don't know, movie that was made for a handful of, I don't know, a pocket of change. I think basically it was made for. They probably had to pay Cary Elwes and Danny Glover more than they spent on the rest of the movie. Who knows? But it made a bunch of money because it was interesting, and it was kind of this new, fresh idea on what people started labeling as horror, which is another contention I have, where I would say the first Saw movie isn't really a horror movie.
No, I'd say it's more psychological.
Yeah, it's like a crime, psychological suspense is where I'd place it more.
Yeah.
But that's the problem. So what happened was, this was Lionsgate Studios got their hold on Saw, had this big hit, and decided, hey, we could really brand ourselves and make our studio bigger if we just make the crap out of these movies. And they made 7 more, and there's another one coming. But there for a while they were making one every year. Like, that was the thing. Every Halloween was going to be another Saw movie.
Yeah, it was.
And it turned into just this torture horror franchise.
Something to think about when it comes to this franchise. The first one actually had very little gore, very little blood,
right?
And they kind of use like camera tricks on people. I remember there's one where a guy has to get the combination off the wall to open up this safe that has a cure for the a poison that he's been injected with,
right?
And he goes up in flames on accident. He didn't really go up in flames. You just saw flames kind of shoot up, and the guy kind of look up and scream. So it was just kind of camera tricks,
cuts, things like that.
Kind of what Texas Chainsaw Massacre did, where they wanted you to think you saw more than what you saw.
Yep. Well, I always go back and say that's the trick Hitchcock used to get past censors with Psycho.
Yeah.
And things like that. And so, yeah, the first one is a lot different. And interestingly enough, some of you may not know this, but James Wan directed the first one, who is now gained a lot of street cred for the Conjuring movies, and he did one of the more popular Fast and Furious movies. Also, Did he just do the 7? Fast 7?
Yes.
But he did one of those movies too, where and he's kind of a sought after director now, and I think this is a movie that really showcases his chops early on, where it was like he just came out of nowhere. He was in his early 20s when they made this, and you really see a guy who understood how to make a movie with very little toys to do it with, so to speak, and make an interesting movie. But unfortunately, they just ran it into the ground, and
yeah. Here's what bothers me about that whole thing. I was actually one of those guys who would go to it every year in the theaters. It's kind of a tradition with me, and it was, I guess, this year is probably the only year. Well, last year too. Usually for Halloween, we'll go see like a scary movie. But yeah, I went to every single one of them, and oh my gosh, I can't even remember what 4 or 5 are about. I really can't. The second one was kind of interesting because you had Donnie Wahlberg in it. The third one, I'm trying to remember, was kind of like a direct sequel to the second one, and then after that, it was just like random people they kept throwing in these movies, and it was kind of like, why do we care that all these people are dying? They're horrible people. It's like, make us care at least a little bit.
Again, we go back to what we've said in the past. If you're I don't know. I think they're just relying on how there's a bunch of people who just want to have a shock factor.
Yeah, that
And sadly, I think it's true. There's just a lot of people who want a shock factor. But.
Yeah. Problem is that doesn't really carry over to rewatchability.
No, but this could get us off on another tangent. But I think that's the problem with some studios is they're not worried about rewatchability. They're worried about instant gratification, but not so much for the viewer. Although sometimes they get instant gratification with the viewer, but more for them.
Yeah.
Like, oh, we're putting $200 million, into the production budget, let alone everything else we're spending money on this movie, and we got to make sure they instantaneously go this movie, just empty their pockets to us, and we get it all back as fast as we can, things like this, and they're not working out the details to make things that are interesting. Some studios are trying now a little harder to right some of those wrongs that they've been doing, because they are seeing that was wrong. They were just trying to do quick bucks, but some of them, there's a lot of movies that still just don't care. You can tell they just didn't put a whole lot of thought into it. And honestly, you can't really even blame the actors, because what are they supposed to do? It's like you get offered this big movie that's going to give you a paycheck that'll cover your mortgage for the next 5 years, or something like this, and it's like, it'd be hard to say no, but at the same time, they don't really have anything invested in the movie because they just like the paycheck, or something. That's what happens sometimes. But yeah, now with the Saw series, it's different, because those are just movies where they're like, oh, we can make these for cheap and, make back our money 10 times over. That's what Saw is. They had a franchise. They realized, like, well, let's just run in the ground, because we can make one of these for like $5 million and it'll make $30 million opening weekend.
Yeah, it was insane just how out of hand things were getting with that.
So, yeah, that's kind of what happened there. But let's go to your last should have.
All right, this one also an 80s movie. Kind of has a cult following, especially I think thanks to the fact that TBS used to air the crap out of this movie.
Back to the Future?
No.
Oh, no, wait, that had 2 sequels.
Close. But I'm talking about Red Dawn.
I think you're thinking of TNT. Weren't they the ones that showed it all the time?
Oh, were they? TNT, TBS, they're essentially the same thing.
Turner.
Yeah. Both powered by Ted Turner's ego. But anyway, moving on. I was kind of like this movie. It took place for a movie that had like a lot going on. It was kind of small in scope.
Yeah.
And it had a lot, I think, to say kind of about patriotism, community, friendship. I do kind of consider this in a way like one of those 80s teen movies, except with more violence.
Yeah, well, in a lot of ways, it was like a teen empowerment movie, which is what happened a lot in the 80s. But you're right. There were like deeper things there. Yeah.
And there were some pretty intense scenes. There's a scene where...
there's some... Yeah, real intense. Like, basically, it's a war movie.
Yeah. It was just... When I watched this first, it seemed kind of... I kind of thought it was, like, going to be something really cheesy. Like, something that was filmed in, like, Montana for, like, $100,000. And for some reason, all the people who were like, America, just love this movie. And then I watched it.
Well, and that did happen.
Yeah. But at the time, I didn't know who... Oh, man, I'm drawing a blank. I can't remember the director's name.
Who did direct that one? John McTiernan? He didn't direct that
I'm
one.
referring to He's also directed Conan the Barbarian. He did a lot of rewrites in Hollywood in his early career, and supposedly he added a lot of stuff that made it into the final cut of Jaws.
John Milius.
Yes, John Milius.
I didn't realize he directed this movie. See, it was written by... The story was by Kevin Reynolds, of all people.
Oh, I
but
thought...
the screenplay was John Milius.
Yeah. But...
and Kevin Reynolds, I guess. But
I find that interesting. He's kind of one of those directors who doesn't have a lot of excessive stuff in his movies. And it's odd because his first movie, I think, was Conan the Barbarian that he directed. And that was like a huge hit back in the 70s. I'm trying to think of what he followed that up with.
His first screenplay was The Devil's Eight. And then he did an Evel Knievel movie. And then his first screenplay, but he was uncredited, was Dirty Harry.
Oh, wow.
But you're talking about his directing? Like what he directed first?
Yes.
Dillinger was one of his first. And then he did The Wind and the Lion with Sean Connery.
I think I skipped that one.
But yeah, he did a handful of movies, but Conan O'Brien was one of his first real big hits, other than, I think Wind and the Lion did okay.
Yeah. But he's kind of one of those directors who it seems like he just kind of gave up making movies for some reason.
Yeah, it seems like he was kind of, yeah, you're right. He was like this guy who touched up a lot of scripts, and he was kind of weird.
Yeah.
He was a really crazy dude. And it was like he just kind of quit caring.
For people who are wondering who this guy is, we were talking about him, he was parodied by his good friends, the Coen brothers, in their movie The Big Lebowski. Walter is essentially John Milius.
Yeah, like a gun crazy big guy.
Apparently, John Milius had a thing where he was always talking about people who died in Vietnam.
Well, he did write Apocalypse Now.
Yeah. He himself could not serve, as I remember, because I watched some special features on Conan the Barbarian one time.
I saw a documentary about him, and yeah, he couldn't serve because of some health reason.
Yeah, asthma.
Yeah.
He had asthma when he was a kid. And the funny thing is, when he was directing Conan the Barbarian, he actually did come out in a military-style beret, the beard, the glasses that you do see Walter sporting. And when I saw that in The Big Lebowski, I don't remember who was with me, but I just started laughing uncontrollably.
But here's the thing. So you've never heard of this guy, but here's the people who he's helped and who speak fondly of him and would call him friend. Steven Spielberg, Francis Ford Coppola, George Lucas, John McTiernan. You know, people that really moved and shaped movies for a lot of years. And this guy, a lot of people don't even know who he is.
Yeah, and then, like I said, the weird thing is he just faded into the background. Oddly enough, people do say that he had an idea for a sequel to this, but he couldn't get it off the ground, and I think it's the video game Red State.
No, it's called Homefront.
Homefront.
Because I played it, and yeah, it's based on his screenplay.
Yeah.
And it's basically what they did with the new Red Dawn, where it involves North Korea. And it was an okay video game, but you could tell it wasn't meant to be a video game. But it still had its moments.
Anyway, if you get a chance to check out more about John Milius, I would, because he's
an interesting dude.
It's interesting you brought up Dillinger, because that movie had what Roger Ebert called one of the most intense gunfights of all time. And I think it's like 12 men just shooting at each other.
Was it the Sioux Falls shootout?
Yes.
Was it?
It's when they go to Sioux. And oddly enough, I don't think it was Sioux Falls that they filmed in.
I doubt it.
It looks like a small town. And it's imagine something out of the original Magnificent Seven magnified to 1,000,000 with automatic weapons, and it is a sight to behold, my friends.
If it weren't for North by Northwest and Dances with Wolves, the only thing South Dakota could really claim for a movie being shot here was Starship Troopers. So
yes, another great from the 90s.
Yeah. Well, we better get into my last one here before we start getting too long here, although maybe some of you are like, holy crap, man, you've already gone too long. But so we'll get into my last one. My last one, I really don't have a lot to say about it, but it's one I wish would have gotten a sequel that at this point I'm a little worried that would be a bad idea. But it's Unbreakable.
Great movie.
Really cool movie about really an origin story of a man trying to understand who he is, even more so than the fact that he becomes a superhero. It's really him just coming into his own really at middle age. And you kind of, when you think about it, you're realizing how he squandered really a lot of his life kind of hiding something, but he was hiding it for the right reasons. And I think that's kind of a part of this movie that gets lost, was that he hid his abilities because of his love, his wife. And it's just kind of interesting when you look at it from that angle on he meant it for the right reasons, and yet it ended up breaking up his marriage to his love. Where that's where we come into the story, was them separated, possibly getting a divorce. And so not only do you have like the origin story of a superhero, but a man just understanding just his identity. And so it becomes a real psychological drama study. And then also you see the flip side of that. You see a man who is the mere opposite of our hero coming into his own and who he really is, and really in his search for an unbreakable man. When he finds that man, he comes into who he is, and it just kind of ends up being a really interesting study on those things, with also getting a really cool superhero origin story on top of it all. But I just think it would be really cool to or it would have been cool to kind of delve into that stuff a little more in a sequel, when Bruce Willis still kind of was trying, I think now he's getting too old and doesn't care. But it would have been interesting to see a sequel that's happened when Bruce Willis still maybe would have cared, and just see where they could have taken this character next.
Yeah, I don't know if it's something that is factual or not, but I heard for the longest time that this was supposed to be a trilogy of sorts.
Well, I know Shyamalan for a long time teased that he had a sequel idea, and then I think it turned into him saying something about, I have different ways I could go with it, and a lot of people speculated that he did have like a series idea. Yeah.
Yeah, the movie definitely ended with you kind of satisfied, but at the same time making you wonder what was the next chapter in this character's life.
Yeah, it definitely had closure, which was good, since we never have and probably never will get a sequel. I'm glad it has closure, but at the same time, it was like, it would have been cool to see where they would have gone next with that character, just because he was an interesting guy, and to even delve more into Samuel Jackson's character, what they could have done with him, because he was. Turn this off. You haven't seen Unbreakable and care, because this will be a huge spoiler. Okay, I'm going to do it now. He basically becomes like the Lex Luthor. You find out he's like a Lex Luthor. And so it'd be interesting to see how they could have used him in that way even. Next. But
I thought, Samuel L. Jackson's, I think, in a little way too many movies than he probably needs to be.
He's in everything. Oh my gosh, he never says no, I don't think.
But very rarely does he ever get to kind of flex his acting chops. And that was one of those movies where it's almost like he was allowed to flex them. And
I really believe that he's one who takes lessons from the Laurence Olivier way of acting, where a lot of actors think you build a character from the inside out. That's like a lot of big actors, that's what they'll say, like, I had to find who this person was and then I'll work on the outside. But I really feel like Samuel Jackson is like Laurence Olivier. If I find the right look and outfit, I can be that guy. Because he's always got like this unique look to him, and it usually involves purple.
He pulls off purple.
But yeah, he does. He does well purple. I'm not saying he doesn't, but it's just like, it seems like you can tell that like this was a character where it's like, I bet he had a lot of say in that look. I think it'd be cool if I had a trench coat, type thing. And like, the reason he said yes to Nick Fury was when he realized he had to wear an eye patch.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I know when Amy Poehler's biography came out and it was called Yes, Please, because she never says, I'm like, that feels like a better title for Samuel L. Jackson's memoir, because he's in everything. So
everybody loves Samuel L. Jackson. And
everybody loves Sam.
Everybody wants to get some.
Yeah, so that's our list of, sorry, shouldn't, in case you forgotten. Mine were Saw and the Santa Claus.
Wait, that shouldn't? Oh.
Shouldn't have.
Yeah, sorry. Independence Day, and Terminator 3.
Yeah, and my should-haves were Rocketeer and Unbreakable.
Mine included the Christmas classics of The Thing and the very patriotic Red Dawn.
Yes, Wolverines! So, with that, we're going to bring this episode to a close. Thanks for listening. Hope you enjoyed. And as always, throw us out your ideas on one way or the other. Like, man, why did they make so many of this kind of movie? Like, why was there a Jaws 4? Or something like that. Or
if you think we're full of crap and you love these sequels that came after because you're insane.
Ouch. No.
I went there.
He went there. He went there. Grumpy Dakota.
The gauntlet has been thrown down.
Yeah, but let us know whether it's in the comments section on YouTube, on our Facebook page. You can find us in those places. Like us and subscribe to us in those places. We are also on iTunes. And we are now on Stitcher. Although our image still doesn't appear, which really annoys me. But we are on Stitcher. So if you use Stitcher on the Android, we're there. So go ahead and, I don't know if you favorite. I think you favorite a station on Stitcher. I'm still learning it. And so, but take advantage of those things. And also, thumbs up, thumbs down, stars on iTunes, whatever you want to use. That's always great. You can do those things. We'd appreciate it either way. Thanks for listening. We'll catch you next time. This is Steven.
This is Dakota.
Take it easy.